Hey everybody, I'm Ryan. Today we're going to do a constructed set review of the Brothers War, starting with white. So the plan for this constructed set review is I'm not going to give any of the cards a rating, because I'm not sure if that's valuable in constructed. You're not trying to figure out what you're trying to take in a draft pack or a sealed pool or something. Instead, what I'm going to do is talk about where each card might exist in constructed, either standard, pioneer, modern, possibly legacy, and decks that might come out of these cards existing. This is just my opinion of the cards in the Brothers War that might make a splash in constructed. So let's jump right into it. Let's start with In the Trenches, which is white, generic. Creatures you control get +1/+1 as an enchantment. And you can pay 6 mana, 5 and 1 white, to exile target non-land permanent you don't control until In the Trenches leaves the battlefield. Activate only as a sorcery and only once. This card is obviously like pretty great, right? These aggressive decks, these go-wide decks, love these Anthem effects, and having another ability on top of it, if you like get flooded out or like need removal or whatever, is pretty good. In order to use that ability, things probably have to be going wrong, however, so that should just be thought of as gravy, unless you're a big mana aggressive deck, which is sort of what we're going to get into with the rest of these white spoilers. I can see this card totally being played in standard in some go-wide white deck, which has already seen a little bit of play in standard. And it's possible the Pioneer white deck could get a little bit lower to the ground to benefit more from the Anthem and play this card. This card is Merrill, Shield of Argive. It is 4 mana, 3 generic, and 1 white. Legendary creature, Human Soldier, 3/4. And it says, during your turn, your opponents can't cast spells or activate abilities of artifacts, creatures, or enchantments. When Myrel, Shield of Argive attacks, create X 1/1 colorless soldier artifact creature tokens, where X is the number of soldiers you control. So what's great about this card is it's a Hate Bears card, and it plays into a like soldier tribal thing, which should be totally real. I actually thought when Dominaria came out with the Soldier Lord that there was a soldier deck, and I couldn't quite make it work. There's a lot of soldier support in the Brothers War, and Myrel is totally one of those cards. So Myrel sitting at near the top of a curve in like a super go-wide make a million soldier token soldiers deck is awesome, especially since like the Hate Bears part of it is gravy. When you play an aggressive deck and a card is a Hate Bear, and you would play it without the Hate Bears effect, like that is an excellent card, and Myrel is definitely there. Kayla's Reconstruction is X white, and it's a sorcery. And it says, look at the top 7 cards of your library, put up to X artifact and or creature cards with mana value 3 or less from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest of the bottom of your library in a random order. Effects like this are generally good. I'm honestly not sure where it would fit in, but there's probably some artifact or creature rampy combo deck that would benefit from a card like this. I'm just not sure where it sits, but it definitely should be on your radar because cards like this are pretty scary looking. It's not obvious though, so it's possible this is a constructed sleeper. Next one, Lauren of the Third Path, is 3 mana, 2 and a white. Is a legendary creature, a human artificer. Has vigilance. When Lauren of the Third Path enters the battlefield, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. And you can tap it, and you and target opponent each draw a card, and it's a 2/1. So the tap, you and target opponent each draw a card, is probably a desperation, is just like kind of a gravy part of the card. The reason you play this card is to play it and destroy an artifact or enchantment. It's a reasonable Hate Bear. It's possible it'll end up like as a 1 or 2 of, and the sideboard of some of these like aggressive white decks. I don't think it's good enough to run in the main deck by any means. Now here's a card I'm super excited about because he's the goodest boy. I have Rescue Retriever. So it's 5 mana, 3 generic, and 2 white. He's a dog soldier. It has flash, and when Rescue Retriever enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each other soldier you control. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to other attacking soldiers you control. And it's a 3/3. So this is the top end of that like soldiers deck that I almost thought could make it with Dominaria, that we're going to put Myrel in as well. What's crazy about this card is like you would probably play it if it didn't have flash. But the way it has flash is it's a combat trick. Also being a part of that combo trick means that when they block, you pump them up and my guys don't die even if they would trade because damage is not dealt to them. And that second part is not an enter the battlefield effect. So every time a soldier attacks, besides Rescue Retriever themselves, damage is not dealt to them. So it seems like this soldier deck in constructed, either Pioneer, possibly standard, is going to be like a very, very go wide strategy where you make a bunch of these 1/1 soldiers, pump them up with Anthem effects and Lord effects, And then just like you have a Combat Trick Lord, which Combat Trick Lord in a go wide deck, that feels so good. Siege Veteran is a 3 mana, 2 generic, 1 white, human soldier, 2/2. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a +1/+1 counter of target creature you control. Whenever another non-token soldier you control dies, create a 1/1 colorless soldier artifact creature token. So this will be put in that soldier's deck in Pioneer/Standard. Unfortunately, it doesn't get a token for itself, so if it's removed, then your opponent doesn't have to worry about it. But it's sort of a must answer because it replaces the relevant cards that your opponent kills like on the battlefield for you with 1/1s. And 1/1 soldiers, which again get pumped up by, the Lord, pumped up by Rescue Retriever. And if they don't answer it and it just sits there a while, not only does it make removal really, really awkward, but putting a +1/+1 counter at the beginning of combat can like make things so much better. I mean, the Pioneer deck already plays a 2 mana 1/1 that does that. Why not a 1 more mana for a 2/2 with extra text that's relevant? Like, I think this will totally be played. Soul Partition is a 2 mana, white and 1 colorless instant. It says exile target non-land permanent. For as long as that card remains exiled, its owner may play it. A spell cast by an opponent this way costs 2 more to cast. It's a little rough. I think it's only good in aggressive decks, but could totally be played in some number. Because most of the time you'd like remove something that your opponent played on curve, and then it like gums stuff up in your hand. And realistically, if they're playing that later on, then they're probably in a bad spot because they're overpaying for something and you're trying to go wide and you're trying to attack. So I could totally see Soul Partition being played, but only in hyper-aggressive decks, only in decks that your opponent doesn't have the time to do these things. By the way, I'm skipping the cards that I don't think are actually good and constructed because there's no point in talking about them. Tokasia's Welcome is 3 mana, a white and 2 generic. Enchantment, it says, whenever 1 or more creatures with mana value 3 or less enter the battlefield under your control, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. I think this is kind of a neat sideboard card for these like small go-widey decks, like soldiers or humans or something in Pioneer and Standard. When you know your stuff is going to be answered and you want to make like every card in your deck draw you additional cards and hopefully chain through them. I could see this played as like maybe even up to a 3 of in the sideboard of these white decks, like against these control decks or against like hyper removal decks. Calamity's Wake is a 2 mana instant. It is a generic and a white. It says exile all graveyards. Players can't cast non-creature spells this turn. So I think this could be played all the way down to modern. Like it's instant speed Graveyard Hate, which is sweet. It stops Cascade decks in modern, which is really awesome. It has like an alternate mode where if you're playing a deck that you really need a creature to resolve, like a really specific creature, like being able to play Calamity's Wake is kind of awesome. But just as Graveyard Hate, that's good against Cascade decks in modern, and just great as a great instant speed Graveyard Hate card in Standard and Pioneer. This will be played. Lay Down Arms is a 1 white mana sorcery. It says exile target creature with mana value less than or equal to the number of planes you control. Its controller gains 3 life. This is like an awesome card. Like this, again, is a card that I think is going to be played all the way down to modern. If a deck that really, really wants to play white cards, maybe like a prison deck, wants it. Because mana is really easy in modern. You can play a lot of planes. In Standard, there's already a mono white reanimator style list that will 100% play this card because it's hurting for removal. This is in that deck, that's literally like a 1 mana sorcery, exile a creature. Doesn't matter what it is. And you play those. You love those, especially in Standard. That is a hyper-powered card in Standard. Recruitment Officer is a 1 mana, 2/1. And you can pay 4 mana, 3 generic and 1 white, to look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card with mana value 3 or less from among them, put them into your hand, put the rest of the bottom of your library in any order. This card's nuts. This card's so good. It's also a human soldier. So this card's going to be played in the Humans deck in Pioneer. This will be played in the Soldiers deck if it exists in Standard and in Pioneer. Because it's a 1 mana 2/1. Awesome. It is on Tribal for those decks. Awesome. And it's a mana sink that gets you more stuff. Like, the worst part about those decks is you puke out your hand, they stabilize on board or remove a creature here or there, and you can't really attack. And then your deck does nothing and hope you draw Brave the Elements. This card is something to, like, put mana into. It's so good. Like, 1 mana 2/1s that have relevant tribal, like, types and extra text. Like, we play Dauntless Bodyguard. Like, you know how rarely you actually use the ability of Dauntless Bodyguard in Pioneer? You don't much at all. I played a ton of that deck. Recruitment Officer, 1 mana 2/1. Is both human and soldier. It's awesome. We play this. Repair and Recharge is a 5 mana, so 3 generic and 2 white sorcery. It says return target artifact, enchantment, or planeswalker card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Create a tapped Power Stone token. There's probably some like super powerful artifact or enchantment that you're trying to cheat on the battlefield. I'm not sure what it is, but I think it's worth mentioning in a constructed set review. I think this would only be like in standard. This is too much mana, and I don't think it'd be powerful enough in Pioneer or Modern. Deadly Riposte is a 2 mana, 1 generic, 1 white instant. It says Deadly Riposte deals 3 damage to target tap creature and you gain 2 life. I think this is kind of a sweet card against these hyper aggressive like mono red decks or mono white decks. I could see it played in standard. It's probably not good enough for Eternal formats, but it being an instant, they attack, you kill it, you gain 2 life, buys time. Pretty good. Disenchant is an awesome reprint. 2 mana, 1 white, 1 generic, instant, destroy target artifact or enchantment. It's obviously going to be played in sideboards, in standard. Loren's Escape is 1 white, instant, says target artifact or creature against Hexproof and indestructible until end of turn, scry 1. This is a pretty good card. I'm not sure if it's better than the cards already being played in Heroic, but it's definitely on the list of cards you could play in like the Pioneer red-white Heroic deck. Warlord's Elite is a pretty interesting card. It is 3 mana, 2 generic, 1 white. It is a human soldier 4/4. As an additional cost to cast the spell, tap 2 untap artifacts, creatures, and/or lands you control. So being able to play these cards as a discount is kind of neat. If you're playing like this Go Wide Soldiers deck, this card's probably on the list. It's not very high on my list, so probably will not be played in the Pioneer version of the deck, but might make its way into the standard version of the Soldiers deck. Because playing a 3 mana 4/4 is pretty sweet, right? If you go like 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 mana 4/4, untap, I have a lot of power on the battlefield. It might be good enough. I'm not 100% sure, but it is on the list for that Soldiers deck. So those are the white cards from the Brothers War that I think might make a splash in Constructed. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on other social medias. Links are above me and in the description. And other limited and constructed set reviews are going to be coming out shortly. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.